And so, Lange, could you tell the audience, who you are and what you do with Reinvent?
Sure. My name's Lange Luntao. I am a teacher in Stockton. I teach college-level sociology, economics, and ethnic studies at Aspire Langston Hughes Academy, and I work with the Reinvent South Stockton Coalition on the education organizing piece, otherwise known as the South Stockton Schools Initiative.
And tell us a little bit more about the initiative itself. How did it get created? Who was behind it?
Sure. I'm sure you've heard a little bit about the history of the Reinvent South Stockton Coalition. The Reinvent South Stockton Coalition was founded 3 years ago under the leadership of Councilmember Tubbs, and the work of a real coalition of community leaders who recognized that there was great work being done in South Stockton to improve the lives of the thousands of residents that live there, but a lot of the work was being done in silos. So when the Reinvent South Stockton Coalition was founded, part of the first year and a half was all around building community buy-in and really making sure that the work that we were doing was rooted in things that community members wanted to see. So kind of taking a page from the playbook of Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, right? Or Mark Ridley Scott. I can never remember his name. The county supervisor in Los Angeles. Right. Yeah, South Central LA.
Who created the kind of reinvent model that I understand city council person Tubbs based the reinvent on.
Yeah, so after Michael was elected, one of the first things he did was he brought a team of folks down to LA to the Empowerment Congress, which has been running for the past 2 or 3 decades. And one of the features of the Empowerment Congress is that it's a way for these civic agencies, the nonprofits, community-based organizations, government agencies that are entrusted with improving outcomes broadly for people in South Central LA. It provides an opportunity for those folks to come together and meet with residents once a year, and for there to be regular feedback from residents to the folks who are entrusted with making those decisions about funding and policy, that the efforts aren't in vain, and that the issues that matter most to community members are actually being addressed. So I guess the long answer to your question is that in 2014, we decided that the Reinvent South Stockton Coalition decided to run a large community needs assessment. I'm sure you've heard a little bit about this. We really approached this from the perspective of a field organizing campaign. And our goal was to get as many perspectives and as many viewpoints as possible, and also to show community members that there was an engaged group of young people, community leaders, elders who wanted to see change and were ready and were committed to pushing for that change. This isn't something that was new. People had done surveys in South Stockton before, but I think the critical thing for us was that we brought together a great team of folks who had been doing good work in their own terrains and hadn't been able to break out of those silos. And second, we used this assessment as a launching point to really decide where we were going to spend our time and where we were going to leverage more investment and attention. So when we did the survey, it was very simple. We just knocked door to door on over 800 doors in South Stockton. We did these volunteer days almost every day for an entire month. But I remember it was August 2014, and one of the clearest responses we heard from community members were that the 4 biggest problems they identified in South Stockton, the 4 biggest issues that they wanted someone to solve were, first, in order, schools, or the quality of education, safety, job development, and then access to youth recreational opportunities, which was kind of overlapping with education. So we decided that we had to do something about schools. And while there have been a number of folks in Stockton and South Stockton that have worked to build strong educational programs and community service initiatives. There are few people in Stockton talking about how we can really turn the curve for students system-wide and how we can be bringing in strong education policy from other communities, be really innovating, and be getting community members on board. So that's like the high-level answer. The on-the-ground answer is that our team is run by educators. I'm a teacher. When we started the Reinvent South Stockton Coalition, Michael was a teacher at Langston Hughes. Our real bread and butter in terms of our volunteers are all high school students and early college students. And so when we thought about the first steps that needed to be taken to improve South Stockton, it was natural for us to start in our schools, because we recognize that schools have a huge amount of potential. Young people have a huge amount of potential, and they really and schools should be the engine of kind of this positive civic change and economic growth. And there are still a lot of obstacles that are preventing that from happening. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. Okay. And so what would you say are some of the biggest obstacles to reinventing, Stockton through the school district? I mean, obviously, first and foremost, everyone thinks of is money, right? But would you say that there's the political will there, the kind of community will to enable and to support those efforts?
Yeah, I think that there is. I mean, in any urban school district, feel free. Schools are really complicated in any urban school district. It is tough to figure out how to improve the educational opportunities being offered to the 39,000 students that are attending school every day in Stockton. And there are a lot of things that are going on, but what I do think is that I think for too long there have been low expectations of students and of schools in South Stockton. I think that there have always been amazing, dedicated, tireless educators. I think that because both of my parents were teachers in Stockton Unified for their entire careers. My mom taught in Southeast Stockton, and my dad was born and raised in South Stockton and also taught most of his life at McKinley Elementary.
My mom was also a teacher.
Yep.
In Stockton
Unified,
and then Lodi Unified.
Wow. Yep.
Lathrop Unified. So, she did adult education for Stockton. Yeah.
So I think that there have always been amazing, teachers that have worked their butts off. I think there have been amazing gems of schools that have excelled. But I think system-wide there's been a complacency around what our students can achieve. I go first to the data. I think it's indicative of the standards we've had for our students that only 1 in 3 students in Stockton Unified, only 1 in 3 graduates in Stockton Unified is even graduating eligible to apply to a UC or a CSU. So having completed all their A through G requirements. So we're not even talking about the high school students who start in 9th grade, but of the students who make it to senior year, only 1 in 3 can actually even submit that application to UC Santa Cruz or Sac State. We have suspension and expulsion rates routinely that are 3 times the state average, and less than 1 in 3 students in 3rd grade are reading at reading level. So I think on the one hand, from the perspective of what's going on in schools, I think that we've had this complacency around that our students cannot succeed. I think that the bigger issue, though, now that I'm a teacher, is that I've seen that a lot of our students, the academic achievement of our students is impacted by the larger community issues of poverty, crime, lack of economic opportunity. And I think for too long our schools have viewed themselves, I think Stockton Unified schools have kind of viewed the work that we're doing in the classroom as being separate from the work that we're doing to uplift our communities. And you can't, I think the assumption that we're operating under is that you can't fix schools without fixing communities. the best schools in Stockton Unified have recognized that, have figured out ways to bring community members in, whether it's through setting up community health clinics or real parent centers, or figuring out ways to bring in curriculum and skills that are relevant for our students. I think of schools like Health Careers Academy and Weber Academy, which is like a technical skills school that is doing amazing stuff to prepare students to enter high-paid apprenticeships. But those schools are exceptions. And so the work we're doing with the South Stockton Schools Initiative has two objectives. First, we serve as a voice for education policy that promotes equity in Stockton Unified, and particularly in South Stockton. Really bringing in research-based best practices from all over the state that we think might work here. And secondly, to bridge the gap between community members and schools, because otherwise schools can't grow on their own. So we do a lot of work taking kind of that organizing focus and bringing in parents, students, community members whenever we can to the work to improve schools. We work with the district to make our data very open and transparent so that we're all on the same page about where our weaknesses are and how and the strengths. One of the strengths is that we have a relatively high graduation rate, which is awesome, especially when you compare Stockton Unified to districts like Oakland Unified or some districts in Southern California. We're doing a much better job of keeping our students through the 4-year cohort, but now we need to work on making sure that they're going off to strong career training programs and strong college readiness programs. So I know that might not be a very sexy answer for you, but I don't know, it's the work that we're doing in schools is so complicated, but we view it as being really critical, because if we can improve, honestly, if we can get 50 to 100 more students to college from Stockton, and specifically from South Stockton, in the next 5 to 10 years, we will make a huge impact in terms of addressing the issues of poverty and crime. And it's really complicated to do that, but the other stuff can't be sustainable in the long term unless we are preparing individual students on a larger scale, I guess.
And how can the community help? Because you were saying essentially one of the key ingredients is community involvement. Yeah. So if someone was listening to this, or you're having the conversation, and they're a community member, and they're saying to themselves, gee, what can I do to get involved? Or what should I do? Or, is it showing up and volunteering? Is it voting for a bond issue?
So you asked about funding. The funding thing is interesting in California, because now there is a lot more money for schools.
Right.
4 years ago, the state legislature passed this huge expansion of money for high-need school districts called the Local Control Funding Formula. And in Stockton, we're receiving a huge influx of new money. One requirement of the law was that districts get feedback from community members, particularly parents and other stakeholders, and that we make decisions at the local level, so that in our neighborhood schools we figure out what are the huge needs and how do we address those with new money. I think for a community member that wants to, I would say, like, first we need people who are engaged at the neighborhood level, that are willing to go to their schools and say, hey, so what's happening to our 800 students every year? Where are they excelling? We have a ton of data now. That's one of the great outcomes of No Child Left Behind. It's one of the few good outcomes of No Child Left Behind. We know where our schools are, but now I think it will take parents and community members really having the tough conversations, the honest conversations with their local school districts, with their local teachers and principals around what the neighborhood needs are. And so it's hard to say at a broad level. For me, because I know that we have a huge brain drain, I want us to be training many more students that go on to college and come back. We have jobs in Stockton. We just don't have we don't have enough folks that are trained to take those jobs, that have either the career tech skills or the college degree credentials to fill those jobs. In Stockton Unified, we have last year we had 60 teacher vacancies, 60 full-time teacher vacancies, and we can't recruit we can't recruit teachers fast enough. So at like the big level, I think there are issues that we need help with. There are issues that we need to mobilize community energy around. But I think that for me, the best thing that a community member in South Stockton can do is go to their local district, their local school, and ask the principal, where are we excelling, and how can we use these new resources that we've been given and use this new opportunity to improve academic outcomes even more. For folks that are listening, that community members in Stockton more broadly, I think that it will take us viewing I think it'll take us just shifting what we think about our students. And I think about how one of the issues that we have in Stockton is that we have several school districts within our city boundaries. I think for too long there's been this division, and families have been afraid of each other. Parents have had this fear that I can't send my kid to school with those kids, and I think that that's led to huge barriers, because now we're trying to rebuild a city that has been divided for a very long time, not only into different neighborhoods, but also into different school systems. And so I think it'll really take us recommitting to this idea that it takes a village to raise a child, that a kid being a survivor or victim of gun violence in South Stockton matters to families and teachers and community members in North, East, and West Stockton, and that there are ways that we can innovatively address those issues as a community, whether it's through developing mentorship programs, whether it's through pushing our school district to invest more in intervention at an earlier level, or whether it's like reconfiguring how we run our schools.
So that gets back to the big pool of money, right? That's now flowing in from the state.
Yeah.
And again, the community's supposed to be engaged, because in the past the funds were given to the inner circle, and they could deem where the money would go to.
Yeah. So
as a community member, how would someone get engaged in helping? Would they show up at public meetings?
Yeah.
There's public outreach. Did they talk to their city council person or their supervisor?
Getting engaged is harder than it should be, and so we need to demand our policymakers make it easier. But to learn about how that money is the money that we're talking about, the local control funding formula, is playing out in your local school district. Every school district is required to have a website where they share their local control accountability plan, their LCAP. In Stockton Unified, all you need to do is go to the website, stocktonyusd.net, and click on the LCAP site, and it breaks down the funding in a less than accessible way. I wish that they would do it a little bit better. And also gives a calendar of events for all the community outreach sessions. But I think beyond that, it's as easy as just going to your local principal and saying, hey, I want to see our data, and I want to figure out how I can be useful. I think sometimes those face-to-face conversations are more productive. And I think most school administrators, most teachers want to have those conversations. They just don't often happen.
So let's turn to kind of some lessons learned. You guys have been at it for about 3 years, and have best practices been developed out of your execution of what appears to be like a pilot?
Sure.
And then from that, are there like schools or organizations and schools together that you would point to that are examples of where you guys are going?
Sure. So lessons learned over our work in the last 3. Well, the South Stockton Schools Initiative has only been around for a year.
Okay.
So we're just coming up on our first year working in the education sphere.
Right.
It's been a really busy year.
Mm-hmm. Lots of lessons.
Lessons
that you're still capturing.
Still capturing. But I think the most heartening lesson has been that there are dozens, hundreds of community members that want a say in how their schools are run. The evidence I have for that is that we had 3 big community events this year. Last fall, we mobilized a bunch of folks in preparation for the selection of our new superintendent. Stockton Unified was searching for a superintendent and was seeking community input. I wasn't getting much, so we decided to host a community coming together in South Stockton, and 55 people came out and had a really great, deep conversation about the sort of superintendent they wanted to see. The report is online, but basically they wanted to see a superintendent that could offer some stability, that understood how to work with a low-income community, that came from Stockton and really got how to treat family members and community members with respect. We're very proud that the new superintendent, Eliseo Davalos, who just started in Stockton Unified 2 months ago, exhibits many of those characteristics. I think that's a step in the right direction, and I applaud our school district and our school board members for making the right choice there. I'm very optimistic about that. I think we also found that even with these like really heady, complicated issues like the local control funding formula and LCAP, I think often these systems make it way too hard to have a voice. But we found that when you prioritize relationships with family members, with teachers, with local community leaders, then you can really get to those honest conversations. We've had a lot of really great conversations and really great action over the past year around what it'll take to actually prepare a student for the real world. My bias is that I think we have huge college gaps in our community, and that also might come from the fact that I teach at a charter school that expects all of our students to graduate ready for college, all 100% of them, and they do. But I have been grateful for the community members who have come out and said, we really, really, the thing that we want most is strong career technical education, so that our kids can get those jobs in solar tech, so that we can become the hub of green energy. And I think that our policymakers don't often have enough time or make enough time to have those deep conversations. For us, when we were breaking down the details of this local control funding formula, the LCAP, it took us 4 2-hour sessions with a group of 20 parents to explain the broader context, both like what a school budget is, and then the impact of this money, and then also expose them to different models that school districts around the state are experimenting with. So that was 8 hours, and I can't imagine any school system. It's hard to find that time in a traditional in the context of like these weekly board meetings and the structure that has been built for community members to get involved, but it's really valuable, and I think the feedback that you gain is really valuable. As a result of that, we recognize that our community members really wanted to see strong goals. strong specific goals. Like, we've all recognized that Stockton schools are underperforming, but what they wanted to see from the district is that if we're spending all this money, where did we hope to be in the next 2 to 3 years, so that we could have somewhere to work towards, and so that if our goal if our priority was college readiness, that community members could have a way in, they could know what their role should be, and we've had some success there. In terms of schools and models that we're looking to replicate, I think that we're hoping to see more community schools pop up and more schools develop that are really engaged with the lived experiences not only of our students but also of their families. And so schools that come to mind that we've really tried to learn from are schools like Roses and Concrete in Oakland, which was founded just several years ago, that is kind of reframing the role of a school not as a bastion of learning that is separate from the community, but as a hub for parents, students, and as a hub for community change. I think our goals are pretty simple. We want students to leave Stockton Unified as prepared as they can be, and so we're looking for any research-based methods that we can try. And so I guess I'm excited that there's a lot of energy, not only at the school district level, but that there are dozens of teachers that have been seeing the work of our youth organizing team. I know you're going to meet Jasmine later, that have seen our work to beautify community spaces, to reclaim parks, to address like holistic health concerns, to fight the school to prison pipeline, and have been figuring out ways to get students involved in all of those community change actions that are happening outside the classroom. And however we can harness more of that energy, I think we'll be successful. Am I answering your questions? I feel like I get into very teacher lecture mode.
No. So final question: sure. What would you say has been the biggest impact within this 1 year? Obviously, it's new. Do you feel like there's one thing that's really was kind of an aha moment for your efforts this year?
I think I'm just really heartened that I'm really heartened that we have a community of students who are beginning to see that they have a role in improving their schools, that speak the language of education policy, that are able to research the data around their schools and can tell us, what are the points of strength and what are the points of weakness. And I'm really heartened that that there are students in Stockton who are developing those critical thinking skills that I think sometimes our policy leaders have lacked. They're doing the hard work of researching programs and education policies that other communities are trying to boost, to shrink the achievement gap and boost academic outcomes. And in many ways, our students are leading our education policymakers and are helping them take those bold steps to improve our schools. So I'm really impressed, and I've been given a lot of hope, because I think we're seeing more and more that young people are stepping up and are saying, these are our schools, and we're not complacent to allow them to. We're not complacent. We're not going to stand by as our peers and our siblings and the rest of our families continue to lack the high quality educational opportunities that they deserve. And so they're really figuring out ways to get involved, whether that's to clean up a park on a weekend or to develop a proposal for the use of this LCFF money, which we have a group of 40 students right now that are that are preparing to bring back the school board. So I guess I'm just really excited to see that a lot of this change is being driven by students who are in schools every day and see their roles as leading change rather than waiting for change to happen to them.
Thank you.